The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Just not the Vindicator, not the Victimizer, or the Vaporizer, or the Vibrator. He's the Violator, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. Someone does not respect my Scottish accent, I tell you. We all rise for the Honorable Judge Rodriguez.
Whatever the fuck that was. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People vs. Spawn, a 1997 superhero film about a betrayed U.S. soldier that is resurrected by the devil and imbued with hellish powers in order to lead an infernal army. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always, in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you're appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
In 1992, political scientist Francis Fukuyama wrote The End of History in The Last Man. In this celebrated work, Fukuyama saw the end of the Cold War as a panacea to the ails of the world, ushering in the 90s with what is colloquially referred to as the peace dividend. Comic books did not get the memo. You see, the tumult moved from the geopolitical realm to the magazine racks, typified by two events in 1993, the death of Superman and the birth of Spawn. These dual events seek to make an imprimatur on the wayward culture, but all it did was reveal an underlying cynicism that had been festering since the 80s. Gone was Superman's truth, justice, and the American way, and instead replaced with a cold, edgy soldier from hell. Spawn's creator, Todd McFarlane, wanted the sizzle, not the steak. He has famously debated style over substance before. To wit, he is the Michael Bay of comic book artists. Ooh. So that leads us to today, to this abomination of a film we see before us. 1997 Spawn is an encapsulation of everything that comics did wrong in those strange days of the early 90s. Poorly written, poorly executed, woefully dated visuals. In this case, we are going to pick the movie apart in such a manner that a guilty verdict must be reached. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Since you mentioned Michael Bay, case dismissed.
Hey, all right.
Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Pat Edwards. Please present your opening statement.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here today. My esteemed members of the jury, this is a very important case that you're going to hear today because I pose to you, it is not just the movie Spawn that is on trial, but the very concept of what is good and bad, the very concept of entertainment. And I pose to you, these two things cannot both be true. To dub Spawn a guilty of being a bad movie is to say that entertainment is bad. We're talking about a movie with one of the most epic hard rock industrial metal soundtracks of all time, featuring the likes of Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, Prodigy, and Korn, to name. That's just scratching the surface of the musical genius of the soundtrack. You're talking about a movie about a soldier and assassin imbued with wonderful and terrible powers in a grim, dark setting, waging a quest to salvage his tarnished soul, battling monsters and demons. Of course, sprinkled with some delightful comedy along the way, all while dancing around the potential end of the world. What I have to say to you today is, how can that be bad? How can something so epic, so visceral, so raw be bad? The truth is it can't. It can't be bad if it's badass.
Ooh,
thank you.
I like that.
Ooh, can't be bad if it's badass. Case dismissed.
Stop doing that, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
fire this
Edwards. Mr. Schlender, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. And yes, this can be bad while being quote-unquote badass. Because you see, there is a lot to unpack here. I'm going to start with my first exhibit about the story of Spawn that we see on the screen. And it's a bit confusing because most of the illuminating details are lost in throwaway lines, if they're even mentioned at all, that even fans of the comic book series could miss. So to start, we have Clown. He's a lieutenant in Hell. He's working with Wynn, Martin Sheen's character, and he's like the big bad guy, to make a deadly chemical agent. Clown then has Wynn kill Simmons, who is going to become Spawn. So Spawn can then kill Wynn and release the toxin that they had just developed, allowing the armies of hell to march on heaven. I mean, this is just a headache, ladies and gentlemen. Why not release the agent independently? You already have it developed. What would have happened if Spawn killed Wynn during their first encounter, which was his goal, mind you? This would have ensured that Wynn could not release the toxin. Why put the whole plan on Spawn's shoulders? Clown has a throwaway line about the other side not getting Simmons. The other side being heaven, presumably. But if that was the concern, why not just keep Simmons off the board? They locked him up for 5 years already. And then you have to wonder, why even choose Simmons? Priest, the other henchwoman there for Martin Sheen's character, seems more in line with the expressed goals of Hell. She seemed fully on board. Very capable killer herself. And you know what? Let's even throw in real-life bad guys like infamous Nazi commando Otto Skorenzi. He would have been a great leader of the armies of hell. This is the same Nazi who led the daring commando mission to liberate Mussolini from prison. I mean, this guy was a real piece of work, a very evil guy. And you know why he was evil? Because Nazis are evil. This is a very easy concept to understand. And they are evil in ways that a family-oriented Marine like Simmons just simply aren't. So then you could say, well, maybe corrupting Simmons was the point. But keep in mind, he already got sent to hell as soon as he died, right? So there was no redemption at all. Straight to hell. As soon as he's in hell, what does he do? He agrees to lead the army. So why these tests after the fact? It doesn't add up. And again, we're talking about tests that need to be executed in perfect sequence, because if he kills Wynn before Wynn gets the heart thing, the whole plan goes kaputs. So we look at Spawn's power level as well now. So let's just accept that Spawn...
Man,
You may.
You're on a man interject. Okay, I've been trying to be polite and professional.
No, don't be.
Oh, never be polite.
You'll have to shut me down. You will have
no one else will be.
To be honest, for the record, Your Honor, I feel some pity for the prosecutor, because they have such a monumental Herculean task of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that this is a bad movie. But there was a few statements that I do apologize. I do feel I need to interject.
No, please do.
Opening talking about, I feel like it wasn't outright said, but there was an implication that the plot is a little convoluted, and to that I say I think it's very clearly laid out, and the stakes are set, and the reasoning and the motivations are there. Hell wants to destroy the world, destroy heaven, and claim total dominion over reality, over the universe, over creation, whatever we want to call it. To do that, they've been amassing an army for eons, and they feel they found their perfect general, their perfect tip of the spear, so to speak, in Al Simmons, the all-time, as is quoted, highest scoring killer of humans. So they orchestrate his death because they need his soul. Now, there are a lot of souls in hell. It would stand to reason, as per the mythology posited by this film. Millions, if not billions. I imagine some are sent there, and that's about it. It's akin to being in prison, in jail, or they suffer, or they're stuck. And then you have some who have potential. They see, hell sees an ability that they can use them, and of course they see that in Simmons beyond anything they've seen before. They see potential. So yes, he does agree in the moment to lead the armies of hell. But they knew he was going to do that. In the moment, he said yes, of course, because yes, he was desperate. He had just been ripped away from his life, from the love of his life, from his family, and of course he agreed. Now, you have time lapse. Why go through everything to have him recommit? And that's just the thing is, as Cagliostro tells us throughout the film, it's not too late for him. His soul can be redeemed. And they wanted him to kill Wynn and set off the apocalypse to fully damn his soul beyond redemption and fully commit, so that not only, yes, to keep him out of heaven's hands, but also to help them march to the gates of heaven. I'm quoting the film, march to the gates of heaven and tear them down. They say it. They spell it out for us quite clearly why.
Yeah, they say that's what they want to do, but they never express why Simmons would be more qualified than even Priest, a character from the movie.
No, they do say it because he is the all-time highest scoring killer.
But he obviously is not in the course of humanity. I mean, he clearly has issue with killing civilians and things. He says, send Priest for that kind of work. As the movie goes on, D.B. Sweeney's character talks about how A6, which is the CIA, it's a bit convoluted, is still running these illegal missions, still hurting people, still harming people. It was Martin Sheen's character who blew up the chemical factory and killed all those Koreans. So I'm not buying it. I am buying what Clown says when he says, we didn't want the other side to get him. But why they wouldn't just keep him off the board entirely makes no sense, especially if they thought there was something that could potentially be redeemed. That is an unnecessary risk. But I would like to continue with my point, if I could, Your Honor.
You may.
Now, so let's accept the fact that Simmons is Spawn, obviously, because the movie has to happen, and really for no other reason. His power level in this movie is near infinite, despite, again, a throwaway line by his consigliere there in the alley about if you use up your powers, it will send you back to hell. Right? Now, that's true in the comics, it's true in the video games, it's true in the cartoon, but we never get to see that really cool Spawn clock that has his power level ticking down. So it's a functionally worthless throwaway line. And I'd also like to point out that Consigliere, the old guy, in the comics, he's also a Hellspawn, right? But he only has one quote-unquote point of demon energy left, and if he uses it, his soul goes back to hell. So that's why he's more of a mentor in the comics, in the show, but this is completely thrown away, and he uses his powers quite freely in the movie. So it's a kind of a bastardization of that character, if you're into that kind of thing. So the problems with the construction of this plot alone can't be ignored by fans, and first-time viewers probably look at it askance as well, saying, why all the trouble?
Pardon
Mr.
me.
Edwards,
Why all the trouble of what, the powers or mentioning? I'm not quite. I still, honestly, I fail to see the problem with what you've just said.
Well, the jury will see it. I can move on to my next point if you like, Your Honor.
No, but I'm just. I would love some clarity on. You say that they, of course, part of why they mention it is it's part of, as you also alluded to, it's part of the comic. Remember, this is still. I'd like to make a real. I'd like to go on record. I know all of this is on record, but I'd really like to go on record as pointing out. I think something we need to not lose sight of is what a pioneer this film was in the realm of comic book adaptations. They were few and far between. There was a few Batmans under their belts, but as far as darker, more adult themed, they originally wanted this to be an R rating. It did originally release as PG-13, and then an R version was released for home video. This movie,
nothing says adult like fart jokes.
Objection. Fart jokes are objectively hilarious. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what your background is. I'd like that on.
Hey, call them hilarious all you want, but it's not exactly adult here. Spawn appeals to a very specific subset of people, and that's moody teenagers in the 90s. I mean, look, Spawn was cool, man. The comic books were cool. The toys were cool. The TV show accomplished everything that you're talking about 100% better. It was dark. It was edgy. It was for adults.
Objection. I'd like that stricken from the record. The TV show is not on trial here.
I'm not saying it's on trial. I mean, I am submitting it as evidence for why Spawn the movie is such a demonstrable failure.
Overruled.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. All right, Your Honor, we could go back and forth on that all day. My point is the plot
your next point
is incredibly attenuated. So I want to move on to my next line here. As I mentioned in the opening, Todd McFarlane once famously debated one-time colleague Peter David in 1993, and the spectacle was referred to as the Great Debate, and it would really go on to typify the direction that McFarlane wanted to take the comic industry. It was all about the patina of coolness and edginess, all about the visuals, and a fundamental lack of thoughtfulness. To speak to this lack of thoughtfulness, Todd famously showed up to the debate dressed as a boxer. Very funny, not very thoughtful. So what do we see in this movie is that is this movie. The plot is a mess, but hey, it looks good, right? Yeah, it looks great for a PlayStation game, okay? And this is not a question of things aging poorly. We see dated effects in classics all the time, but there is a reason we will be talking about King Kong in 100 years and not Spawn. The practical effects of Spawn's skin and all of the clown makeup are well done, but unfortunately, they're not the highlight of the feature. As the making of featurette stressed, it was focused on making, quote, a dialogue of movement, and this fell woefully short. The cape looks too fake and lacks the lifelike quality that it was gunning for, and this was even a contemporary complaint, not even through the lens, of 2022. Given the pedigree of the artists attached to the film, including the director and McFarlane himself, one would hope for greater care, but instead we get a blobby mess that lurches on screen, a copy and pasted Hell's Army, and of course the aforementioned clown farts. We see better effects in Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, movies the director had worked on before this. This film did not set a stage. If anything, it was a curtain call. I challenge you, look up the IMDb of almost any CGI personnel attached to this film. Steve Spaz Williams, their leader, his best work was behind him. He worked on Star Wars. He worked on Terminator 2. His last film, Spawn. The last feature film of director Mark A.Z. Dip with an E with an accent, Spawn. This was an ugly movie in 1997, and it is an ugly, bad movie today.
Counterpoint, when you get something perfect, you walk away.
It's their Spawn song.
Thank you.
No, but if you're going to argue that this set the stage for comic book movies and things moving forward, these people were not a part of it. They had there was no forward momentum after this movie. Michael Jai White said very famously in an interview that it made studios tighten up on superhero movies and not give directors free rein anymore. He said that's what he saw happen on Blade, which would come out after that, was the studio taking a much heavier hand, so they didn't get another Spawn. So that is the ignominious legacy of this film.
I've warned you about using big words.
I like saying ignominious, but I kind of botched it.
So I was film. I was having trouble with. If this film is guilty of anything,
and it is,
it's being too ambitious and too brave and taking too many risks.
You sound like you're smiling through that, so I don't know if I could take you seriously.
To be able to tackle the challenge of looking at the beautiful artwork on the pages of the Spawn comic book and that flowing, sweeping, seemingly endless cape, and to put up such a valiant effort to capture that with the limited budget and technology of that time. I believe this was about a $40 million budget estimated film.
Yes.
At the time. I say bravo. You got up and you did your best, champ. Also, Counselor touched on something too. I do want to talk about it. I feel like it's very easy to try and focus too hard on the CGI. When you'd have years after this, you'd have things like the Matrix sequels with the most rubber physics and cartoony looking villains I've ever seen. That are supposed
objection!
to.
Those aren't on trial.
Okay.
Sustained.
I just chose an asshole.
It goes to prove my point, Your Honor. Again, it goes to prove my point. Similar as Counselor used the Spawn TV show as a juxtaposition, I am using that other property as a juxtaposition.
Well, he's got me there, Your Honor.
I warned you about those damn big words.
However, what is undeniable about this film, the practical effects, the makeup, the casting of, first and foremost, of Michael Jai White as Al Simmons. He is Al Simmons. He is the physical embodiment of that character from the page. And then the practical effects of his burnt flesh and his suit when it is a practical effects. And Clown, the makeup on Clown, the presentation, and John Leguizamo acting in a full squat, wearing a 50-pound suit. Those are things that cannot be discredited. I think they look head and shoulders above anything else that was happening. This is a movie that came out in the same year as the Shaquille O'Neal led Steel and the Batman and Robin starring George Clooney.
And Batman would kick Spawn's ass. But you know what?
Objection. That is demonstrably false, Your Honor. That needs to be stricken from the record.
I don't know these comics well enough to actually.
Batman with prep time. Batman with prep time is what they always say on the internet.
All right, sustained.
All right, so actually, I'm glad that you brought up Michael Jai White and John Leguizamo, because that brings me to my next and my final point.
Oh, thank God.
John Leguizamo is the standout. It is impressive how well he's hidden under the clown makeup, but he is the silver platter that is serving up a shit sandwich. Clown is so greatly mischaracterized in this film, it just undermines everything Johnny L, as I suggest we hereby refer to him as, brings...
Objection.
That Mr. Leguizamo brings to the table, Luigi himself. Clown is not a farting, wisecracking fool. He is a truly dangerous one of the 4 disciples of hell. This lack of fealty to the comic is enough, but even if you are not a fan, you can see how they just laid it on too thick. You never have room to breathe when Clown is on screen. It's joke, joke, fart. Fart, fart, joke. We get
you never
it.
have room to breathe because you're laughing too much. Thank you.
No, not even. And he gets reintroduced every scene like this. Now, that's the problem with John Leguizamo. Michael Jai White is famously on record with his disappointment in the movie, and it's clear to see why. He was trying to act for a serious movie, and it got recut into schlock. He has spoken favorably of some first cut of the movie with less effects. I believe he quoted it as having 77 effects, and then the version that made it to theaters having 440. Now, hey, I want to see that movie. I want to see the human Spawn movie that's more like the cartoon. And then, of course, we have to talk about Martin Sheen. He was so good in this, it scored him the lead role in The West Wing. No. See, Sheen took the opposite approach of White, and he hammed up his role, adding to the conflicting cacophony of tones that we see from our 3 principal leads. Ultimately, we are D.B. Sweeney, confused and trying to access the secure files of a movie that could have been.
What you
secure
call
files access.
cacophony, I call contrast. I call you can't have everyone. You cannot have every. Let's be honest. This is a campy film, and it knows it's campy.
I thought you said it was an adult film.
Those are not
I
mutually
thought
exclusive.
you were saying this was an adult superhero action
There are
movie
plenty
that
of
should have
adult
been
campy
R.
adult films. You can have camp. Those are not mutually exclusive things.
I mean, how seriously are we supposed to take the movie? Are we supposed to take it as seriously as Michael Jai White, as seriously as Martin Sheen, or as seriously as John Leguizamo?
He's the straight man.
Because it can't be all of them.
But you're right. It can't be all of them. They can't all be dialed up to 11 with their over-the-top caricature performances. You have to have a through line. You have to have a straight man, someone for the audience to identify with. You have to have that foil to contrast.
I don't even think he's being at the level of foil, though. I think all 3 men are acting as if they had all read the script differently. If maybe they've all read different scripts. But I will rest my case there, Your Honor, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Mr. Edwards, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
So I touched on my first exhibit. I do want to go back to it. The makeup of this film, as Counselor so generously put it, John Leguizamo is nigh unrecognizable in his clown makeup. And the performance he turns in is incredibly high energy. It is consistent. It is
too much.
He went all. That is objection. That is not that isn't a personal opinion and not something that can be proven one way or another.
Oh, I think I can prove it. The movie exists. We can watch it right now if you like.
No, I'm not watching it again.
I think he and Michael J. White play well off each other. They, again, we're talking about a contrast here. We're talking about a movie that is supposed to be dark and a little bit of edgy, but it can't be all one thing. It can't be just dark, because that just becomes a slog through thick, depressing mud. And it can't just be over the top, every character dialed up to 11. You have to have that contrast. You have to have that sweet and salty at the same time. It's something where you can tell they're working their butts off, and I like the casting. I like the casting of Wynn. You have a change up from the comic in Jessica Priest as opposed to Chapel. That was for legal reasons, where the character of Chapel was owned by Rob Liefeld at the time. And you have this small cast of people who are given something that's honestly, again, very ambitious, a very difficult property to adapt given the time, the technology, and the budget. And when I say time, I mean the era. And you have all of these different ingredients in the stew all kind of playing their part. And it comes out to a fun to watch. I will be the first in less than perfect, because what is perfect? But a fun to watch.
Quiet.
A fun to watch comic book adventure movie. And again, as I alluded to earlier in this conversation, in this court proceeding, this paved the way. This came out before Blade. This came out before the X-Men, the original X-Men films. This was a film that showed you could take things from the page, keep them truer visually, like the practical effects of Spawn's face and suit, and it could look great. You could have
I would object. I mean, we had practical effects for Wes Craven's Swamp Thing, which was the first comic book movie back in 84? Swamp
82.
Thing looked great. 82. Thank you, Your Honor. And then we had the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, which looked great. We had the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton Batman movies, all before Spawn, So we could look back into the oeuvre of comic book movies and have much better examples than Spawn. I don't think Spawn set the place or the stage for anything that came after it.
I like
the first
object.
Superman, 1978.
Yes.
Yeah, but it didn't have Swamp Thing in it.
Okay, but
well, I mean,
the first comic book
sustained.
movie. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to qualify and pave the way for not just, of course, there have been comic book films. I mentioned them myself as well, but pave the way for a darker, edgier comic book film.
And you didn't think Swamp Thing was dark and edgy? Hey, I'm big on Swamp Thing. I'll talk about Swamp Thing all day.
I would have gone with Batman Returns, but if you really want to stick with Swamp Thing, I guess dig your own grave at your own time.
I mean, you could even Superman 2 had an edge to it, Superman 3 had that horrifying cyborg at the end that gave us all nightmares. I mean, comic books movies have an interesting history.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, back to the film at hand, I want to point out, this is a film, again, that is jam-packed with action. Even the original Batman films, which I personally love and think they're excellent films. If you go back and watch them, they are somewhat, especially the first two, they're a little bit lighter on action than I think we remember. This film opens up with Al Simmons performing an assassination. And then he has his mission to destroy the chemical weapons plant. Explosions, gunfights there. He's sent to hell. He comes back as Spawn. There is his initial fight with Clown as the Violator. There is a high speed fight on a highway with Spawn riding a motorcycle and Clown driving a truck, shooting grenades at him on top of from a grenade launcher. What movie has that?
Then immediately takes away any of the stakes when it blows up and Clown goes flying at the screen. Ha ha! See how Wanda's. It's like, oh, good. We get to see Clown.
There
make
wasn't
another
supposed to be-
stupid joke.
But the whole point of that sequence is to get Spawn angry and riled up. It wasn't to kill him. It wasn't to. It achieved its purpose.
Yes, no, we've established that the plot is very convoluted and revolves around.
I don't
him
understand
killing
what's convoluted.
Wynn
It's very
at
spelled
exactly
out.
the right time. No, he has to kill Wynn at exactly the right time for some reason. And never mind when let's think about this for a second. When he's using his laser eyes to get the heart monitor out of Wynn's chest, it's not attached to his heart anymore. That would read as a flat line. I mean, what's going on here? The whole world should have ended right there, then and there. Case dismissed.
Oh, not case dismissed. Your Honor, objection.
All right, we can go home now? Okay, great.
If you want to discuss the ins and outs of the heart monitor, now the heart monitor is set to go off if his heart flatlines. It is not unrealistic to say a flat line is not the same as a signal being disconnected. That is a specific
it was still
reading.
on
It's
when
connected
he
to the
pulled
heart.
it away from the heart, though. If he destroyed it in his chest, I'd give it to you. But he pulls it out of the chest and then destroys it. I mean, if he just disabled it, why destroy it at all? Then I mean, you're in a rough spot, but it doesn't make any sense. Don't try
I
to
disagree.
defend
It makes perfect sense. He
It makes no
removed it
sense.
because again, he removed it because he is choosing the light versus the dark. Because if he were to destroy it within Wynn, it would still kill Wynn. It would still result in Wynn's death.
Objection. That's conjecture. We have no idea what would have
It
happened.
makes
He
a
has
tiny
powerful
explosion. He
laser eyes.
dissolves it. It's hell laser eyes. It would definitely kill him and melt some internal organs.
That's
It
pure
dissolves
conjecture.
the metal.
Look,
It
he
mel-
was able to use the laser eyes to
you
get
telling
it
me,
out
sir,
of him
that
safely?
that a beam of energy that can melt and dissolve a metal device would not cause damage to human
It
internal
didn't
organs?
cause damage to him. He pulled it right out of him, and he was unscathed in the next scene. And DB Sweetie sitting on the couch with his gun, smiling. It was Jesus. What the hell, God? No, it doesn't
No.
make sense. That's what I'm telling you.
It makes perfect sense. He removed it so as not to kill him, so he can remove the threat of setting off the weapon, and he makes the choice of the light, not the dark, by not committing the murder that they want him to commit.
All right,
Look,
I
I'm
think
just saying, he
we've
pulls the-
established
okay,
this.
yeah, I'll just keep
Thank
saying
you,
the
Your
same
Honor.
thing.
Let's move
I'll
on.
keep saying the same thing. It is funny though.
Any further exhibits, Mr. Edwards?
Yes, indeed. Checking my notes here. Yes, I'd like to enter exhibit this 1997 review of the film by none other than arguably the most famous, most respected
no.
film critic of all time,
Oh God, I know where this is
the
going.
late great Roger Ebert.
Oh Jesus!
Who praised Final Fantasy?
Objection. Ebert's a hack.
Who
We've established he's a
I
hack.
object to the objection. Can I double object to
No.
the objection? Okay,
I double dog object.
Your Honor. I mean, how can you not hold Counselor in contempt? He just called Roger Ebert a hack.
I
Well,
always
I mean, given what you're about to say, I don't know that I necessarily disagree. Oh, so please go ahead, Mr. Edwards. What did Roger Ebert have to say?
I will be respectful of the court's time, but I will simply say Roger Ebert rated the film Spawn 1997 3.5 out of 4 stars.
Jeez.
Wow.
Again, arguably one of the most famous, well-respected film critics of all time. And because he was a man who understood the beauty of a dark, epic saga peppered with comedy throughout, he understood that a movie so full of battles and explosions, a movie so full of just wonderful visceral delights, it can't be bad.
No, he
if
said
it's
we were going to
badass.
remember it the same way we remember Metropolis in Blade Runner. He's just wrong. He was wrong in that review. That's all you can say. He liked it for the spectacle and the artisticness of it. He did not like the story, which he says right out the gate. He talks about how thin everything is. He liked the spectacle, which was not good in 97, so he was just wrong. And it hasn't aged the way he predicted. So it's just a wrong review. Yeah, I read it too. I was surprised. I was hoping
For the record,
I was hoping
Counselor,
to get ammo for my case. I'm like, oh, Ebert probably hated this and he loved it. I'm like, what?
I would like to go on record that Counselor posits a reality in which they themselves are a more skilled film critic than Roger Ebert.
I do posit that reality. That is now what's on trial. I am better than Roger Ebert.
Your Honor, I don't know how we don't have a mistrial right now. This man is clearly insane.
No, actually, I kind of agree with him right now. So
Yes.
I object.
can't object to me, buddy. Can't object to me.
I object to that. No.
The whole system's out of order.
What I'll tell you is, say what you will about the CGI, and you have.
Yeah, I won't say it again. Don't worry.
Say what you will about the CGI. Say what you will about the story, which, again, I still don't see the issue. It is very clear what the stakes are, what the motivations are, who wants what, and who wants what to happen, and why they want it to happen. So I truly do not understand what more you want from this. That being said, this movie is entertainment personified for all of the reasons I've stated before. This movie is fun to watch. Even if you are not a fan of it, if you're not personally a fan of it, you're welcome to watch in the same vein as my esteemed colleague here did and watch and point out all the things and nitpick that you don't like about it. It's not boring. And the fact is, if it's not boring, it's entertaining. And if it's entertaining, which is the point of all movies, it's not a bad movie.
Have you ever been entertained by a bad movie before?
I would
Possibly during Mystery Science Theater 3000, for example.
My personal tastes are not on trial here. The movie Spawn is on trial.
Do you want to rest on that case?
No. I have one last point to make.
Okay.
Oh, go for it, brother.
I have one last theory to present before the court. And it's a theory which I believe makes the concept of proving beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, counselor has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is a bad movie. An alternate understanding, an alternate viewing of the film and what is happening on screen. A few things we haven't touched on. One, Cagliostro mentions multiple times. He mentions tests. You have to test. This is your final test. There is a glancing shot earlier in the film when as Spawn, L. Simmons first confronts Wynn at the gala of a character who is obviously Angela, the celestial demon hunter from the comic books. You see her in her green dress and her earrings. And then, of course, there is the CGI and hell. I will concede is not the best, most accurate lifelike representation that we've ever seen. However, I posit there is a universe. There is where the events we see in this film are not entirely as they appear to be. Where the major events of this film are a scheme concocted by Cagliostro and Angela to test Spawn. Remember, both sides want him. If Angela's purpose is to hunt and kill Hellspawns, and a Hellspawn crashes the gala where she is, why does she not intervene?
You know, it's funny. I actually noticed her for the first time today, too, and I was also wondering that. And the reason is dollar bills, y'all. They were trying to set up a sequel.
The reason is they were trying to set up a sequel that never happened. It was all a test.
It was all a dream. Oh, man. The last refuge of the desperate, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm saying that is definitively the case. I am saying it is merely a possibility, and the fact that it is a possibility for points 1, 2, and 3.
Bro.
And it's not just on a whim. There are 3 different data points that could connect those dots. It is a possibility, which means that the fact that's a possibility negates the criticisms, because we've seen that these Hellspawns can shapeshift and change their appearance. We've seen they can manipulate reality. All I'm saying is there is a possibility where this is true. There is a possibility. And with that being said, it negates those criticisms, ergo negating the overall argument by counselor that this movie is beyond a reasonable doubt a bad movie.
I would say everything you're saying is very reasonable to doubt. So I think my case is fine.
Yeah, okay, so both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Schlender, you may begin.
I will be brief. Spawn was a failure, but it never put the umami of the superhero genre in any real danger. It was a flash in the pan, the sizzle. It was ultimately just flat and unengaging. We had great superhero movies before Spawn, and great after. Spawn added nothing to the conversation. We can hold this movie up as an example of what a bad superhero movie is. A confused and confusing story, leaning on visuals that can't carry a movie, and ill-advised decisions in character portrayal. So let us close this chapter on this bizarre and bad 90s curio, and hope that a more faithful and nuanced interpretation of Spawn lies in the future. Thank you.
God, I hope not. Thank you. Mr. Edwards.
I said nuanced!
Mr. Edwards, you may present your closing argument.
Thank you. I too will be very brief. Counselor just called this movie a failure. It was not a failure. It made more than double its money. It made almost $90 million on a $40 million budget. That being said, so it was financially not a failure. That is an objective, undeniable fact. Another fact about this film. Again, esteemed, lauded, arguably greatest film critic of all time, Roger Ebert, rated this film 3.5 stars out of 4. And I say to you one last time, a film with such a hard-hitting, shredding soundtrack, backing up scenes like Spawn encasing himself and his entire motorcycle into some mobile, rocky, devilish stone juggernaut, a scene of Spawn being impaled on wrought iron grates, a scene of Spawn fighting a giant oversized violator on floating islands of magma in hell. I say to you one last time, it can't be bad if it's badass. Thank you.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Robb Maynard, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. I'm not saying that nickname, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
You want to see an army from hell? Just spend Burns night with my mother's family. Oh.
Bailiff's life gets so much sadder every time it gets updated.
Poor guy.
All right, guys. So, interesting case. Ryan, what did you think?
Well, I was mad in the process of watching this. I'm less mad now because I remember almost nothing that was actually discussed. It has slipped from my brain like so much gook. But this is not a good movie. Seriously, what is
It's
good
definitely
about
not a
this
good
movie?
The practical effects.
Not bad one.
The practical effects.
The
all of
practical
the
effects
makeup.
are, the suit
all
is
of the
okay.
makeup is good.
The face, the facial makeup is okay. The clown makeup is okay, but the CD-ROM level CGI is just oh my god.
Here's what makes me
Anytime
mad
that cape
as-
gets busted out. Oh.
As the prosecution said, it's like, I guess there was a cut where there was only like 70 pieces of effects, and I think at that point, like Mel Bolger wasn't even in the storyline, like, so we never actually went to hell in this version of the film.
Honestly,
yes, and that's what I'm saying. And then they went back and they added hell real quick and got like 400 CGI effects. What they should have done is gone back and made the cape look better and touched up like Violator, even though Violator it's not super bad, but everything in hell's awful. I mean, that stuff is absolutely PlayStation 1 graphics. That's so bad. That's like it's Birdemic CGI.
Yeah.
Ben, what were you thinking?
Oof.
Hearing them talk, like, when I saw this movie, I thought, okay, well, this is all stupid. Spawn can do literally anything. Where's the threat in here? And then, like, hearing them talk about, like, well, in the comics, there's, like, a Spawn clock, and, like, that mentor, like, can only do one last trick, and all of that would sort of solve a lot of the problems that I see present in this movie, where I just don't care, because this guy can do literally anything. He can turn into a building, and I don't even know what all he can do, It seems like his imagination is sort of limited to just having spikes come out of him. But he pulls up powers out of his ass whenever he needs them. So narratively, that just doesn't quite stick.
Narrative is an interesting word to use in discussing
I'm
Spawn.
a narrative guy, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm with the prosecutor on that heart monitor. I don't want to drag that up, but that's stupid. Like if it's functioning and we can see it's functioning, then it could tell that his heart is not beating, and that's the whole point of what it's doing.
Yeah,
the whole movie should have ended right there.
I kind of quickly Googled it, and it seems like at least old heart monitors too, especially, would read a disconnect as a flatline.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, ouch. I was kind of curious about that. And yeah, the whole plot of like he's going to work for Wynn and Wynn's going to kill him, and then he needs to go back and kill Wynn to release the gas is sort of strange, I guess. But I thought the defense had a decent rebuttal to it that it's supposed to be the final step of corruption for Spawn.
That actually bought. That seemed like that was well explained within the movie.
Now the thing I really want to talk about, John Leguizamo.
Who is this guy? Why do you guys love him so much?
I don't. So I still think it's one of the high points of the movie, but like that's not saying much. Leguizamo's performance is fine as for what it is, but like the writing of Clown is awful. Like I'm fine. I'm fine with him when he's horny. That kind of seems demonic and lighthearted. Like it's obvious some studio exec really thought he's a clown. He should be funny. But like when he farts, that's just cringe. When he's doing disgusting things and eating maggots, that's cringe. But then like when he transforms himself into a cheerleader, now he's just completely stupid and ridiculous. And it's obvious stuff like that he's
doing that for no reason whatsoever. No one's even watching.
It's
him.
Like, exactly. Like, okay. It's pure comic relief for us, and it's not funny. So I wish that Clown was more lecherous than he is just goofy.
More insidious.
Yeah, exactly. More insidious. Make cruel jokes, sure, because you're evil. But don't be a clown, basically.
Oh, boo.
But what else do you want me to say, Ryan? Anyway, so Ryan, which way are you leaning?
Oh God, not even a question. Guilty. So fucking guilty.
Based on the arguments?
Based
on your own feelings?
No, based on my own feelings, based on the arguments. I can find so little about this experience that I can actually quantify and identify as something that I would ever want to deal with again.
Big Ben?
There was nothing really that tipped me over. Like when at the end when he's like sort of talking about this fan theory thing, I was like, man, that guy puts like Jack Dawson as a time traveler in Titanic to shame. He's just really trying to make this thing happen.
It's an interesting idea that we can't prove though. But it's an interesting idea. Right. We can't prove it.
And a very handsome lawyer brought up a review by the esteemed movie critic, and that didn't help him in Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
I mean,
oh man,
Roger Ebert, as far as 3.5, also gave 3.5 stars to Aliens, and he also gave it to like Pumping
Aliens
Iron
equal to Spawn.
Yeah,
oh wow,
and Pumping Iron 2, The Women. So like this guy doesn't exactly have a great track record of what of how his reviews are going to go. It's he's about as inconsistent as we are, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're guilty as well.
I'm letting the air out of the balloon. Yeah, it's guilty.
All right. I'm actually going to go not guilty. This is not a pity vote. The plot is convoluted. But I like all the practical effects. I like Spawn's costume quite a bit. I like his makeup. I love his burn makeup. And I like Clown, and I like John Leguizamo's performance, although when he farts, I want to crawl under the couch and just die. But to me, the practical effects just slightly pull it out of the muck enough for me to go not guilty. But to close the book on, can it be entertaining and bad? Yes, it can absolutely be entertaining and bad when you're entertained by how bad it is.
Yeah, like The Room, which we've established that you can't vote it as not guilty just because you had fun with it.
Right.
Even though
well,
I
it depends
tried
what
to
you're
vote
having
not guilty,
fun.
But you told me that I couldn't.
Yeah, you're not having
on top
fun.
Of that, I did not have fun with Spawn.
Not having fun in spite of the badness. You're having fun because of the badness. That makes it bad. But let's get out there and tell that a very handsome judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor, in the case of The People versus Spawn, we find the defendant guilty of being a bad movie.
It's fun.
The verdict is so rendered. I hereby sentence Spawn to 20 years hard time in the netherworld of substandard 90s CGI effects. Court is adjourned.
That's too harsh, Your Honor. This is John Clown Wazamo reporting to you live outside the Reels of Justice. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you won this case. Would you care to share your thoughts?
Yes, you disgusting little man. Justice has been served today, and this is just another one of those 90s nostalgia bombs that we got served up, and we gotta just accept the fact, like, man, we just like bad movies when we were kids. I bid you all adieu. Take care. And my hat off to my esteemed colleague who put up a great, great fight, and I hope we see him again in court soon. I bid you adieu again.
Excuse me. And here comes Pat Edwards. Can we get a thought on your what you thought of the verdict today?
I think it is a gross miscarriage of justice. I will be filing an appeal. I'm pretty sure that the prosecutor and the judge and the jury know each other personally.
No, that's why it's surprising I won, because they know me personally.
That's true. We don't like each other.
I'll be making note of that to the Bar Association. This is obviously a room full of people that hate fun, and justice was not served here today.
I too hate fun, so I'm going to go pretend to be your cheerleader right now for no reason while we get back to the studio for a post-trial analysis.
There was a reason. It was hilarious, and no, it's not.
All right. Yep. Trial's over. Pat, you can tell us if you actually like this movie or not.
Which because I know I was introduced to y'all through the official Twitter account. So which one of you was I conversing with this whole time?
That was me. I'm Dylan.
No, it is not you. No one talked.
Oh, he
to
meant
you.
on the show
Right,
or on Twitter?
it's
No, in the Twitter.
It's
No.
Ryan.
In the Twitter DMs before this.
Oh,
Me.
right,
I was
me,
slipping into
Ryan.
your DMs. No,
Okay.
God damn you all.
As you know, I was very conflicted because you threw that out there. I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember loving that movie, and I love the comics." And then I watched it, and I messaged just like, "Oh no, what have I done? What?
Yeah.
What have I?"
Well, it was a valiant effort. I mean, you did
No,
have
you
me
did
going like,
good.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
for a couple times.
So when Maynard's like, "Hey, we're doing Spawn on the show," I'm like, "Oh yes, I've been wanting to defend Spawn since day one." He goes, "No, he wants to prosecute," and I was like, okay, or he wants to defend. You'll have to prosecute. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then when he told me like, "Hey, he's having second thoughts," I'm like, "Tell him I'll switch."
All right, but we've talked enough about Spawn, though. Honestly, we've got to talk about
Yeah.
Pat.
That's true.
What keeps you busy? What have you been up to?
Yeah. So I am a writer professionally. First and foremost, I have two major writing irons in the fire. I have an ongoing sci-fi comedy novel series called Space Tripping. There's Space Tripping 1 and Space Tripping 2, The Chaser. Both are out now. If you go to, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or bookstores and find them in paperback and ebook.
Cool.
And there is an Audible version of the first book. Version of the second book is in production. Or if you just go to my website, thepatedwards.com, there are links right there on them to buy them directly from the publisher. And then I also write professionally in the TTRPG, tabletop role-playing space, most
Sphere.
notably fifth edition of D&D. And
Oh, wow.
I've got I co-wrote a book that's out now called The Red Opera. It's this adaptation of a heavy metal album, like a gothic metal stage show called The Red Opera by the band Dia Morte from Dark Star Records. And we adapted the story because it is like an opera, like with the stage play and everything. That we adapted that into this massive 5th edition campaign. It's all about warlocks. Co-wrote that with another writer named Rick Hines. I'm a contributing writer on a couple of other independent gaming publications. And then as far as other media, I am a co-host of a movie podcast myself called Let's Rewatch, which we'll need to get you all on maybe one at a time or in clusters of twos.
As
or all
long as you
together.
don't have us rewatch Spawn.
No, so the point of Let's Rewatch, I like what y'all do here because it's a very unique. There's a million movie podcasts out there, and there's a million Let's Dunk on Bad Movie podcasts as well. I like ones that take a different approach. What y'all do is fun, nice setup. Let's Rewatch is about ambiguity. It's about movies that we don't know if they have held up the test of time. And we say test of time, we try to have 10 years. It's got to be at least 10 years old is our metric. And the show split up into two halves where we record a conversation about the film, having not watched it yet. So someone's done a little bit of research. We talk about the cast, director, how it did at the box office, a few trivia. We make predictions, and then we pause the recording. I'll go watch the movie right then and there, and then come back on and have a discussion minutes after finishing the film about it.
That is so funny. We were talking about doing that idea with our buddy literally last weekend.
Really?
We were talking about doing it with Dylan's brother. We were like, it'd be interesting to revisit things we hadn't seen in a while, talk about our impressions first, watch it. So brilliant idea. Now we don't have to do it because people can just watch your show.
So you don't have to
do it.
Exactly.
No, it's a lot of fun. It's really fun.
We'll give you all the credit, of course. Like,
No, we'll just come on your show when we want to rewatch stuff.
And
also, you became my favorite guest. I love D&D, man. We're gonna have to talk.
I was about to say, Dylan, you have 30 seconds to ask to talk D&D with him.
What do you think about 4th edition? No,
that's fine. So we should talk about that and have you guys come on and stuff. And the nice thing is, we go into each viewing optimistic, like we want to like the movie, right? But if something sucks or is problematic, we're gonna dunk on it and make fun of it in the after show. And what's fun are the episodes where the energy, you can feel the energy shift from first to second half, where if we're if we're like, I don't know about this movie, we'll all come back like, that was a lot of fun. Or the ones where we're really high on the hog and we come back like, oh no,
that was racist as hell, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think one of our most legendary
song in the South, it didn't age well.
One of our most legendary tone shifts was Boondock Saints. From a couple of us were like, we loved this movie in college, to coming back like, oh no, that was domestic terrorism.
And that's bad. Okay.
But and then one last thing, or couple. Sorry, I got a lot of irons in the fire. I apologize.
Yeah, go for it.
I am speaking of D&D. So there's a lot of live streams and real play shows. Because I'm a writer, I connected with a couple of other people who work from home and have very flexible jobs, professional artists, in the people in creative industry. And we actually do a weekly show that's in the afternoon as opposed to the evening. It's on Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Geekly Inc. Twitch channel. And we're currently playing through. We had our first season was we do the official Wizards of the Coast books. We did Descent into Avernus, and we're currently doing Rime of the Frost Maiden. We're gonna kind of on our third season do something different. We might do the Red Opera, the book I co-wrote, and I'll take over as DM. But
that would be awesome.
I'm a cast member in that.
Yeah,
thank you. And then my very last thing I'll say, I do a sometimes podcast because it depends on the show. We did 2 seasons about the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian called Bounty Buddies. And we are currently doing Book of Boba Fett, which is
nice,
different.
Probably. I haven't watched the Book of Boba Fett yet. I was I don't know. I felt like we got a little soured on Mandalorian at the end, so I haven't been excited for Boba Fett. But maybe we'll just wait for all of it to be out and then just crush it.
Me.
Yeah, you'll know it all via memes, though.
Yeah, exactly. And if you run out of Star Wars shows to cover, you guys can start doing paper towels.
What?
What are you talking about?
There's a paper towel brand called Bounty, but you guys aren't very smart.
Yes.
That was a walk, man.
It was not a walk.
Yeah, we're not smart. We're not smart.
You guys are terrible. Pat and I are smart. But before you're off the hook, we always ask for a recommendation from our guests for a movie that you think people should see. So what is a movie that you think people should check out?
Okay. So because we just brought it up, I just talked about I mentioned The Mandalorian. So there was a very small. I can't imagine the budget of this thing must have been. Again, you were talking about what the prosecutor might say the opposite of this film is not doing much with a lot. They did a lot with a little. There's a sci-fi film called Prospect starring Pedro Pascal.
Okay.
That is maybe you're all really well aware of it already. I don't know. I feel like it's
Ryan
sees every movie.
Ryan's seen every movie.
Spoon feed us, please.
I think it is a very interesting. I love big epic sweeping saga things as well, but I also really enjoy small genre films or where it's small stakes. It's set in a sci-fi or fantasy setting, but it's much smaller, right? The story, the narrative, I think that's very fun. Like with Star Wars with expansion, I don't want everything to be about like planet killing stuff. I want, like with Star Wars, for example, I would love to see movies and shows that are, do a fucking rom-com and stuff. Am I allowed to swear? I apologize if I'm not.
Please fucking do.
No,
okay.
Don't fucking
do a rom-com
in
Star Wars. Do a straight up horror film in Star Wars, right? Just play around with that. So Prospect is this small film, very small cast. I mean, less than 10 people. About like it's they're mining some very valuable resource on a planet or on a moon of a planet, right? And something goes wrong, and it's about like survival out. It's a very kind of more hard sci-fi, very realistic, very tough. Of like life would be very difficult if we were colonizing and going around and trying to make existence on alien worlds. And again, it's a very small story. The stakes are purely you have a protagonist just trying to survive, right? Just trying to make it to the next day. And I just think it's really well done, very minimalistic, but also with some interesting sci-fi elements to it.
Oh, that sounds good. I absolutely will check that out because
it's on Hulu right now.
Schlenzo, you were the opposing counsel, so what is your recommendation?
Well, thank you very much. I'm recommending another superhero movie with Michael Jai White in it, and that is the recent released Batman Soul of the Dragon. This is basically a Batman animated feature directed by our boy Sam Lau. Have we learned from last week yet? It's Sam Liu.
You don't know how to pronounce your boy's last name.
But you know what? When he reads this and then goes back and listens to the show, but he knows I love him. He's a great guy. So it's 1970s, and Batman is in a kung fu espionage epic. I mean, that's all you need to know. Watch this movie. It's hilarious. It's great. It's fantastic. You'll love everything.
No, that does sound cool. I know you watched it with the children.
Yes, I did, and the kids loved it as well. And now my son is doing karate kicks everywhere.
Oh, that makes sense. It's the Soul of the Dragon. So I was the judge, and I know our film featured a superhero.
But that's okay.
I was the judge. Ryan, you were the judge. You get to go. Go, Ryan. I thought I was the judge. Ryan, you were the judge,
how could
you
you
get
not
to
remember
recommend.
if you were judge or not? It was 10
We
minutes
were all
ago.
judging this film, Ryan. We were all judging
Slipped
it.
out of my brain, Ryan. It slipped out. I edited an episode recently where I was the judge.
For my recommendation, the judge's recommendation, I wanted to go hard in the opposite direction from Spawn, so I've chosen Ken Loach's 2019 film, Sorry We Missed You. It's a searing indictment of the gig economy, an empathetic family drama, and a modern tragedy all at once. Not a single flowing CGI cape to be found. I haven't been able to shake it in the days since I watched it, and that is the mark of great cinema as far as I'm concerned. No clown farts, I promise. Sorry We Missed You is currently streaming on the Criterion channel.
And I was the foreperson, so I'm going to go ahead and go next.
Please do. I'm ashamed. I deserve to go last.
And I'm going to recommend the movie that Spawn should have been and recommend Constantine. It's not a perfect movie, but it has the armies of hell and heaven squaring off on the ethereal plane where Constantine can see the in-between, and it is so cool. I personally really enjoy it. Keanu Reeves plays a demon slayer who's dying of lung cancer due to his addiction of cigarettes. And he knows he's destined to go to hell, but he's fighting for the forces of heaven. And it has angels, it has demons, it has Rachel Weisz. What else do you need? Head on over to HBO Max to check it out.
You said it has racial vibes?
Rachel Weisz.
Oh, that's a much different thing. That's a person, not a concept.
Rachel Weisz.
So, Maynard, you were not the judge or anything. So
I
what
wasn't
do you
anything.
recommend?
I'm just an idiot who got confused.
You showed up. So what do you want to recommend?
Confused idiot me. Our film featured a superhero from hell. So for my recommendation, I'm going with Hellboy from 2004. Although I think I'm a bigger fan of the sequel, the first one captures more of the archaic occult aesthetic, as it features a demon turned superhero, paranormal investigator, a famed Russian mystic, Grigory Rasputin, unspeakable eldritch horrors from the cosmic deep, and most importantly, a clockwork Nazi, which I remind all of you was the name of my ska band back in college. There's a ton of occult imagery and references, loads of action, and an ample supply of mirth for all. Hellboy is currently streaming on HBO Max, and of course, Clockwork Nazis was recently streaming on Spotify. However, we just pulled all of our music in solidarity with Neil Young.
Ha! Well, that's going to be a dated
Neil
joke.
Diamond? Was it Young?
Neil Young.
Read the news, Ben.
Ben, read the news, Ben. Anyway, with that, we are all out of show, but we want to thank our guest, Pat Edwards, for joining us. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank you for having me.
You are a great sport, and we will have you back soon. And we hope everyone else will join us as well, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Hell.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.